This is Minecraft's end dimension. It may not look like it, but this is the result of viewing the dimension by zooming out millions of blocks. Contrary to the blocky premise of the game, the end is made up of several circular, fractured rings that surround the central island where the dragon fight occurs, with large sections of void in between each ring. In fact, if we zoom in quite a bit, we can actually see the central island in the middle of this image, and from this angle it definitely is minuscule when compared to the rest of the size of the dimension. This screenshot provides context into a version of the end which has never been seen before, and better yet, I have a strong suspicion it can actually help us solve the lore of the game. You see, one of the largest mysteries in all of Minecraft is what is the story behind the Endermen and the strange world they inhabit, and this screenshot may help us solve that question. In this video, we'll be uncovering the truth behind Minecraft's end dimension, and how this one screenshot pretty much solves the entire story of the place. So, with all of that being said, let's begin. Let's start with the question. Where do you think Minecraft's end is located? The overworld is meant to take place in a parody of Earth, and the Nether is meant to be a parody of the underworld. But what is the end meant to be? At first, this may seem like a difficult question to answer, but if we do a little digging, we can actually get a pretty good concise answer. For one, the entire dimension is vast in a dark void above and below it, signifying that we could potentially be in deep space, as that is what the end's void and sky most closely resembles. In fact, the connection between deep space and the end goes deeper than the existence of the void. For example, if we turn on the new Vibrant Visuals feature, every so often a bright flash of light can be seen in the end coming from the sky. Although it is unknown what truly is causing this flash, one popular and potentially correct theory is that they are actually supernovas, which are massive and bright explosions that are the result of dying stars, something which could be seen in deep space. Okay, so if we're going with the theory that the end takes place somewhere in space, what exactly is the dimension itself? After all, it's not like any real-world locations look like it, right? Well, believe it or not, but there's actually a space object which almost perfectly resembles the end, and that is a Super Saturn. Many of you are familiar with just normal Saturn, the planet in our solar system with a ring around it, but Super Saturns are that but multiplied by 10. Super Saturns feature a relatively small planet at its center, at least when compared to its environment, and around said planet are tens, maybe hundreds of rings. If we take a look at the picture of the zoomed out end dimension, we can see it looks really similar to a Super Saturn, with several large rings surrounding the central planet, with the planet in Minecraft being replaced with the Dragon Boss Fight Island. In fact, the end being a massive Super Saturn actually explains the fractured landscape of the farther end islands, which is pretty cool. In case you didn't know, the rings on a Super Saturn, or just any Saturn in general, are composed of millions and millions of rocks, debris, dust, and asteroids. They're not uniform like the surface of a planet, but instead they freely float next to each other in a ring formation, which is exactly what we see in the end dimension with the floating islands. These aren't really islands, but more like massive pieces of debris in those outer rings, explaining why the dimension has gaps of void within its surface rather than resembling more like the Nether or Overworld in terms of land distribution. So, all of the evidence, including the vibrant visual end flashes, the voids present in the end, and the large rings that are viewable only by seeing the dimension incredibly zoomed out, points towards the end being a Super Saturn located in deep space. However, what good does that serve for the lore of the game? What does the end being a Super Saturn tell us about the story of the Enderman and the dimension as a whole? Well, I believe it could actually tie into why the end ships were built. You see, a staple of Minecraft are the end ships, which can somewhat uncommonly be found near end cities in the end dimension. These most notably contain the very sought-after Elytra item, allowing players to fly, but they are also the only source of dragon heads, a very special decoration block. Now, although that's where most people end their journey with the end ship, simply raiding it and moving on, I have a feeling it has a deeper meaning. Let me ask you a question. Why do you think these end ships exist? There is no water in this dimension, and these structures simply float freely in the air. Well, it's largely implied that whoever made these ships used them to travel the dense sections of void located in the end, whether that be in between the central end island, in the very first ring, or in between the outer rings millions of blocks away. We know this because the ships seemingly have the ability to fly mid-air, and given the existence of the elytra inside of them, that may further the connection between the ship itself and the ability to fly. Before I continue, let's just get some quick facts out of the way. It is largely believed within the theorist community that the Endermen are actually an ancient civilization of players who became trapped in the End and eventually, through one way or another, mutated into the Endermen. Given how these are the only inhabitants of the End with the capability of building, it's widely thought that they were responsible for creating the End cities and by extension the End ships. Additionally, given how the dragon willingly attacks Endermen, and the Endermen attempt to hit the dragon when provoked, these two have a negative relationship with one another. These all combine together to explain what I think the true purpose of the End ships are, and that is that the Endermen, or whatever they were before mutating into the Endermen, were dragon hunters. This is not an original theory. In fact, I'm pretty sure game theory came up with it first, but I just want to quickly explain what it means. Essentially, one of the widely believed theories about the End ships are that the Endermen used them to travel the dimension hunting Ender dragons, not only explaining why the two mobs don't like each other, but also why dragon heads appear on each ship. This is also a little unrelated, but apparently the developers themselves acknowledged the relationship between the Enderman and the Ender Dragon, stating how they did in fact hate each other from a lore standpoint. So that further proves that I'm not crazy here and that is actual canon. This theory is further proven by how one singular dragon appears in the whole dimension, at its center, implying the rest have been hunted to extinction or somehow disappeared, likely through those means. Given how we have theorized the End is a massive Super Saturn, the Enderman would have needed something to travel the large gaps of void in between each ring in order to get to a new ring and by extension hunt all the Ender Dragons located on it. This is why they created the End ships, to travel between the rings, and I assume they were gonna travel to the main End Island, but something got in their way. So, to answer the question in this video's title, given the fractured landscape of the End, its shape when viewed from an extreme distance, the supernova-like End flashes which can be seen with vibrant visuals enabled, and the existence of the void, we know it's likely the dimension is a massive Super Saturn located somewhere in deep space. And given the theories around the End ship and relationship between the Enderman and the Ender Dragon, it's likely the Endermen or the civilization they once were used the End ships to travel in between the rings of the Super Saturn to hunt the Ender Dragons. There is still a lot more to learn about this dimension, as well as the otherworldly inhabitants that reside inside of it. However, now that we know what exactly the dimension is, or rather what it likely could have been, we can hopefully use the information to explain other oddities present here, such as what chorus fruit are, or what the shulkers could be. Anyways, with all of that being said, let me know in the comments what you think, and thank you all for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.